Welcome, everyone, to the show. See lots of hugs and high fives in the chat. Talking drinks. Love it, love it, love it. Well, welcome in, everybody. Glad you're all here. Got a good show planned for you tonight. So, I am here with my good friend, the all-famous Jolly Roger. He's more popular than I am on these streams.
No, I don't know about that.
I think it's true, man. People love you. People love you. Well, welcome, everybody. The Crackmeister's here. Glad to see everybody's doing well, man. Everybody's piling in.
Yes, miscreants, malcontents, and hooligans.
That's right. All of the above.
Guilty as charged.
Accurate for me as well. So, mic checks. Obviously, let us know how everything sounds. There's been some updates. We got new hardware. A lot of things going on. I think we're good. All my levels look good. But you guys let us know if you can, hear us okay. So, lots to talk about, man. It's been a while since we've done a live stream together, man. I think it's been when you were here, right?
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like 2 months ago, something like that?
Yeah, probably 6, 7, 8 weeks ago.
Wow.
7 or 8 weeks ago. Yeah, it's been a while.
That went fast. All right, I'm going to turn you up. All right. Check your mic there, Jolly.
Yeah, how am I sounding, everybody? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you've got a lot of room from here, so I can adjust you from here. But I just turned you up a good bit. You should be good. That is a good question. Seaman asks, someone needs to ask the important questions. Is Jolly still a pirate, or did he become a privateer?
I think I've moved up to privateer now. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to pretend like I know what any of that means. So I wasn't joking when I said in the chats, I literally have a bucket of Topo Chicos beside me. I love Topo Chicos.
All right, Crack, I moved a little closer. Does that sound any better?
Yeah, it's like I have these little monitors, and I want to make sure both of us are at the same level and how they're reading. But at the end of the day, yeah, that should be better because they're both
okay,
equal.
good.
Now. Yeah.
Good.
So we got a lot to talk about. Popping another Topo Chico. So, yeah, man, we've got some good videos coming up. You're going to be coming back to Florida here soon.
Yes, very soon.
And we've got minimum 4 videos planned. And this time actual videos. Because before we just, we did our range day and that was awesome. But, so yeah, we got that planned. We've got the T-Sauce Raider video that comes out tomorrow. Which I love that gun. Let me just tell you guys, that's a fantastic pistol. Yeah, really good gun. Sorry, I'm making sure I'm eyeballing the chats here. So, but we got 3 topics to bring to the table tonight, but of course we want you guys to interact and we'll be responding to you guys. I'm going to say 4 topics because I want to talk about Charles's issue that he's having with hammer follow. I want to explore that because that is that shouldn't be happening for sure. Nothing normal about that. And this is why, why don't we just start with that? That one's been on my mind ever since I've been seeing that in our Patreon group. This is why if you guys look at the Kuhnhausen manual back there, it's in that stack there. He talks about sear angles and why it's so important. And there's so much good information out there about this. But sear angles and why you shouldn't mess with them ever really matter because it's not just how the trigger feels. It's about keeping the trigger safe. That's such a big deal. And that's why from the start of this channel, I told people I'm never going to teach people how to do that, because I feel very strongly about this. I feel like that's the kind of thing you need to learn under the tutelage of somebody in person who knows what they're doing really well. Because look, I started out, looking at stuff on the internet and then tried it myself. I know what a mag dump, an uncontrolled mag dump on a 1911 feels like. Like there's nothing fun about that. And so it's a scary thing to mess with. But unfortunately, people go on the internet and they think that, well, if I just hog on this, even polishing. This is why I tell people I don't polish sears. That's never been required throughout history in 1911s. They're going to polish themselves all by themselves. I know a lot of people do that. They put a mirror polish on everything. I just don't think that's a great idea at all, because at the end of the day, a polish in every technical sense is still removing material, and you're messing with the edge. So anyway, with Charles, with your issue, I almost, I remember you said that. He said, I haven't messed with the sear. The gun was bought used. And look, here's the other thing. It can also just be that the sear can be worn out or faulty. That's totally realistic. But either way, you got to get that issue solved, because, I put out that video recently about, how to inspect your 1911 if you're thinking about buying one. And this is why, because, you guys have all been there. I think we've all been there, where you're going to buy a gun from somebody, and it's some guy who's dressed like Jesse Pinkman, and he's got like the sideways hat, and he's just talks like a thug, and he's like, "No, man, I haven't done anything to it." And you start going through those checks, and you're like, "Okay, this guy thinks I'm dumb." And it's just really good idea to know how to check that stuff. So, did you want to say anything on that, man?
I just second what you said about not polishing things. Out of curiosity, I did that once. I polished a sear face and hammer hooks.
Yep.
With less than desirable results. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I did it on some old parts just to see what would happen. And you're exactly right. I used Simichrome paste, which is a very mild abrasive, but I was removing metal.
Yep.
And it did not give a better trigger pull. In fact, it gave an erratic trigger pull. So again, they were old parts, but I would get occasional hammer follow with that.
Yeah. Because
what you're doing that you don't realize is, especially on the sear face, you're rounding that off.
Yep.
And now, maybe it was a brand new sear and you did that, you might be able to dress it with a stone and get it back. But essentially, you're just rounding off. You need sharp angles there. And otherwise, especially if you do the hammer hooks also, because hammer hooks are fairly shallow to begin with.
Yeah.
You've got two rounded edges that are trying to lock together. So do not, don't be the kitchen table commando with your Dremel.
Yeah.
Just stay away from polishing hammer hooks and the sear nose. Just stay away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Those things were cranked out by the millions in the past and to a spec. And, as we used to call it, GI spec was like a 7-pound trigger on an A1.
Yep.
But those things would hold. They were reliable. You wouldn't find hammer follow. So I'm thinking it's an out of spec sear. Maybe, who knows? I haven't had a lot of time to think about the problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's see if we can figure it out here tonight.
Yeah. I mean, look, when I've run across these issues where it's like something just doesn't feel right, especially when you're having a legitimate safety issue like that, I'm ditching that sear immediately. Sears are cheap now, man. And but going back to something you said, Mark, is you know, the sear not only needs to not be polished, but it needs to have two distinct edges on the top of it. You got your
Exactly.
primary face or your primary angle, and then your relief cut or your secondary. And when you start blending those two, it's super dangerous, and people don't realize. Like, look, the 1911 is very safe until you start to dick with it. It's like if you just leave it as they designed it, it's very safe. And look, all the 1911s I have really good triggers. All the best triggers I've ever felt, no polished sear edges, not a one.
Yeah.
You only see, and this is going to be offensive to some people, but you only see polished sear edges on guns from at-home builders, which is not bad. That's what we all are. But people who don't know what they're doing, that generally is what you see. And I used to be one, but then I got bit by it. And the guys who taught me, I'm like, dude, why am I having hammer follow? And he's like, please don't tell me you dremeled and polished the sear edges. And I'm like, I did. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go flog myself. So he's like, I don't remember what he said exactly, but he's like, if it needed to be polished, they would have done it, from go. And he's like, they don't need to be that. So, yeah. Now that was something else I wanted to bring up. I'm glad you just said that. So, some guys in the workshop chat were talking about if the trigger bow is too far back, that you do want a little bit of relief between the trigger bow and its actual contact, like having that little bit of take up and having that standoff distance with pressure on it from the sear spring is a good thing. That's true. You do not want the trigger bow just resting on something. That's Danger City. And look, this is where, again, guys, I can't recommend it enough. The Kuhnhausen manual, you must get it, read it, because he talks, really in good detail in there about stacking tolerances. And this is why you can't just go throwing random parts in there. Like, 1911s are not Legos. And there is a John Moses Browning spec. There is a Colt spec. But that's a little ooey gooey, and it's changed. This gun's been around a long time. And so, you throw one part in and it's maybe 5% off, and then another part in that's 3% off. Before you know it, you've stacked all these inaccurate tolerances into a gun that's not safe. So, yeah. But look, these problems, here's the good part. These problems are where you really have light bulbs come on and start to understand the gun in a big way. That it's these problems, once you achieve the solution and you get past them, this is where you learn the most. So keep your head in it, man. Chris Chiampo's here. What's up, man? So let's that'll dovetail us nicely into the first subject that I wanted to talk about, which was extractors. So I don't have a bunch of pictures to demo for you guys. I just want to really talk about this, at least initially in the abstract. I get emails about this. I can't even tell you how many. It's got to be in the hundreds, comments and emails. Because there's a lot of wrong information floating out there around extractors. There's a lot of propaganda from companies who want to sell you things. And, look, am I going to put a nail in the coffin of this topic with this conversation? I doubt it, but I just want to give my opinion, and I'm interested to hear yours as well, Mark. So the big myth that I want to deal with first is, and this literally I'm going to talk about it in tomorrow's video on the T-Sauce Raider. I made a comment about it. But there are YouTube channels who hate my guts and make like hate videos about me because I say what I'm about to say. And that is, you do not need a perfectly tuned extractor for your gun to work. And I know that's a shocking statement, but I'm just going to ask two big, broad questions here. One, are we saying that all the 1911s in the past that have served very well in military service have had perfectly tuned extractors? I would laugh. I would point and laugh and roll on the floor obnoxiously if anybody's going to make that claim. Because let me tell you, they're not. If you've ever shot an untouched GI gun, no. there was not somebody tuning those extractors. At least not perfectly. And then two, the other point I want to bring up. Well, before I do, I want to hear what you have to say about that first point, because it's, I see these other channels and really what they're doing, it's funny. They won't tag me or come to me. They just make videos about me and talk crap like I'm never going to see it. And then people send me their video. But, what people think that I'm saying is the extractor doesn't matter. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this idea that extractors are so delicate and they have to be perfectly tuned. And if your casings aren't going into a nice, neat little pile up 30 degrees, falling at 4:30 o'clock, then something's wrong with your gun. It's just not true. It's not true. I have pistols that throw brass like confetti out of a t-shirt cannon in every direction, and they run perfectly. Right? So what are your thoughts, man?
Well, remember, I go back to when the military was still using 1911s.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many rounds those things had. If the service life on an A1 was 7,500 or 10,000 rounds, these probably had 50 or 100,000 rounds through them. And I can tell you that you could look at the back of the slide and the extractor would be clocked 10 degrees.
Yeah.
You could pull the firing pin plate out the back and tip the slide up and the extractor would fall out. Now, if you've ever messed with an extractor, it's its own spring.
Mm-hmm.
So you're tensioning when you tension an extractor and you're putting that bend in it for tension, usually you have to push pretty firmly to get it back into the slide. But I've seen military 1911 A1s where you could tip the slide up and the extractor would fall out.
Yep.
And those guns still ran fine. All of the tolerances were so loose on those that, like I said, you could see the extractor clock a number of degrees.
Yeah.
The extraction was erratic. I mean, you might have 3 or 4 in a little cluster, and then 2 went forward and 1 went over your head, and you got 1 between the eyes.
Right.
But they always worked. It's a very forgiving design. So, yeah, it's obviously it needs to be done right. I would say up to a point.
Yeah.
It's more important to have the tip of that extractor properly adjusted, I would say. And it's very simple and very quick to do. And of course, we're talking about aiding in the feeding also.
Yep.
It's the extractor, it's extracting the spent brass, but it's also part of the feed system on the gun. So the hook needs to be adjusted properly. It's very simple to do. You did a very good video on it, excellent video. But yeah, it is not the life and death criticality thing that some people make it out to be. And I know, we're going to get flamed over all of this too. But like I said, anybody that's old enough that's been around since the 1911 A1 was in military service, I got to take those apart and work on them. Those things were, you do the rattle trap thing. 2 things about them. They always fed and they always extracted.
Every time.
Every time.
Yep.
When we had problems with anybody shooting a 1911, it was people who had never shot guns before. and a lot of it was from limp wristing.
Yep. Which is
You
a
know,
real thing.
the gun has to push against something to cycle properly.
That's right.
So we never had feeding or extraction problems unless somebody just wasn't providing a good enough grip. Mechanically, though, they worked fine. So it's very easy to tune an extractor. It's literally a couple of minutes,
Yep.
5 to 10 minutes. My old Colt that I got, my original 1991, I have never touched the extractor on it except to take it out when I do a thorough cleaning. I've never profiled it. I've never added tension to it.
Yeah. And it ran great when you had it here.
Yeah, it ran 100%. Ran 100%.
So that dovetails us nicely into my next point on this. In the past 10 years, there's been about 2.5 million 1911s sold. Okay. That's just the past 10 and a half years. That does not account for the 1911s already in possession by people, which is in the tens and tens of millions. Okay. There is a ton of 1911s on the market. Here's my question. If 1911s require just this perfectly tuned extractor, and if they're not going into a pile, there's this big fat problem. Where are the lines out the doors at gunsmiths for extractor work? Because your experience is typical. People go buy 1911s and they're not like us. Typically, people buy them and go, it's a cool old pistol from World War II, and they go shoot it in the woods with their buddies, and they go home, and they don't, like, literally, I know conservatively 50 people like that, where they're like, I just want an old Colt 45, and they go get a Colt 45, and they go in the woods with their buddies and shoot it, and they don't clean it, they don't do a thing, and they don't think about it, and the gun works, right? And so this idea, it's propaganda, and this is the unfortunate thing about 1911s, is people don't understand what they were to begin with, which is two things: a factory-produced pistol, not a custom pistol, and two, they are a military pistol, and that means they've got to work. The military is not in the habit, at least not in the past, of adopting things that suck. They need things that work. And when you get to the history of the 1911, what made the military adopt it? Well, here's a big part. Watching John Moses Browning burn 6,000 rounds out of one in an afternoon with 0 failures. So these guns have to work. They have to work. And this, but see, what happens is people learn about the 1911, and there's a few channels, videos that have been sent to me. And look, I appreciate everybody sending them to me. They think I'm going to make a response video. I'm not going to, because if these cowards are not man enough to Roger up and reach out to me and say, hey, can we talk about what you said? I'm not wasting time on that. But what you tend to see when people make a big deal about the extractor, it's more about them and what they think they know than the gun itself. Another good example of that is there are people who think you have to have a pistol that passes the 10.8 performance extractor test. Okay, the 10.8 performance extractor test was invented by Hilton Yam in what, 2008? The 1911 had been around for a long time before the 10.8 performance extractor test ever existed. But see, it's intellectually dishonest. People take a thing and they make it the benchmark, but this new benchmark as a requirement, or else your gun sucks, doesn't align with history. Because, look, I mean, again, you just go back to the service history of this gun. This gun has been in every single environment conceivable. It's been carried privately, police, military, competition. The jury's out. These guns work. And so the whole reason we're talking about this, though, is if you guys hear this, absolute nonsense that your extractor needs to be perfectly tuned. It doesn't. Now, does it need to be right? I think the way you said it was really good, Mark, was there is a point it has to be correct. Like, and I'll give you an example. The Toad. Everybody remembers the Toad. Which I don't know if JRK is here in the chats, but he is the proud owner of the Toad that was donated to the channel by Crack, which that's a great gun. I had a little bit of like, I don't want to give this away. Like, I actually really like that gun. But anyway, that gun, here's a good example of what the extractor needs to be. And that is, that extractor that came with it was too long. Literally, the distance the hook reached out was way too long. So it does need to be the right size. The hook needs to be the right profile. The bottom corner usually needs to be trimmed, not always. Like, there is a lot that needs to be correct, but the idea that it has to pass the 10.8 performance test and it has to all this, that's not true. It's nice. It's nice to have a supremely tuned extractor, but my personal benchmark, and it's all about reliability, is look, I don't care if it's spraying cartridges, spent casings out like a fountain. If they're extracting with authority and reliably, what do I care? Honestly, what do I care? You know?
Yeah, there's another component to that too. I saw a comment here that Crack made. I literally don't care where the brass gets thrown as long as the gun runs.
That's right.
Exactly. Now here's something. Our range session we had 6-8 weeks ago when I was down there. Certain guns were throwing the brass kind of all over the place, and some were throwing it in literally in a bucket.
Yes.
You know,
Matt's gun.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing that nobody thinks of. You could tune the extractor perfectly, and out of a magazine of 7 or whatever you use, 7, 8, they're not all going to land in the same place. Maybe half of them will. And there's a reason for that also. Variance in the ammunition.
True.
I remember a lot of us reload. My reloading, everything I do is very precise. Mm-hmm. But when you're buying some Winchester White Box or American Eagle or some MagTech or something, that stuff, they're running hundreds of thousands of rounds or millions of rounds a week or something, crazy numbers. And I don't have any way to prove this other than testing factory ammo with my own carefully done hand loads. My hand loads land in a more precise spot than factory ammo does.
Mine too.
And I think that's because of variances in the powder charge that's in the brass.
Yep.
So, say we'll just, for the sake of discussion, 5 grains of powder X, that's what Winchester uses. Well, maybe it's getting 4.7 when the machine's running at 10,000 rounds an hour.
That's right.
And maybe some are getting 5.1 or something like that. So everything can be adjusted properly with your extractor, but you can have a variance in your ammo that can cause, how it throws, out of the gun. So you'll see 1911s that'll throw a round or two forward.
Yeah.
One will hit you between the eyes, 3 go over your shoulder. You're like, what's up with this? But magazine after magazine, if it runs, that's the most important thing. It's fun to tune one and try to get them to land in a bucket. Yeah. That's pretty cool. But if it runs and it doesn't do that, I'm good with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that was like Matt's gun, which, oh my gosh, that gun shot so nice. That was a great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Honestly, I love that pistol. And that one was extracting, I mean, into an 8-inch little pile of brass. It was perfect. And people look at that and go, they for some reason, there's a line drawn in their head from that to reliability. That's not reliability. It's just the extractor throwing brass in one little pile. Because look, my first 1911 was a Springfield GI. And my buddies used to call that the scatter gun because it shot brass everywhere. And they thought that was just a 1911 thing. Maybe it is, right? And and the reason it was a thing is because one particular range I used to shoot on when I was a good bit younger, they were really particular about you not leaving brass laying around. So we would lay out giant tarps, and mine was always the problem because you couldn't just have a tarp off to your right. You had to bring like a pile of tarps because it would just throw brass everywhere, right? I was the problem child. But let me tell you, easily 7,000-8,000 rounds through that gun, never had problems with reliability. That, in fact, I ran that gun so much, it had never, all of the forum lore, the lies from the forum goblins had not yet entered my mind, and nobody had yet told me, oh, well, 1911s are unreliable, and oh, 1911s, you got this and that in the extractor. I was blissfully ignorant, and I just ran that gun like a scalded dog, and it never failed. I mean, it was the most reliable, one of the most reliable 1911s. And so anyway, I do want to answer some comments here. I'm going to catch up.
Let me throw one more thing out there too,
Please.
while you're looking. Another variance. You and I both have brass that's been reloaded so many times you can't read the head stamp anymore.
Yeah.
So there is definite wear on the cartridge rim. It's not the same size it was when that brass was new. So you've got a tolerance that's changing.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's getting smaller. So, you start out, if you only shoot brand new brass or factory ammo, you never reload, you'll probably see a little bit more consistent pattern, if you want to call it that, as far as where they land.
Yeah.
But if you're a reloader and you reload brass dozens of times, like a lot of people do, you're going to see that they don't land, and they don't, you're not going to land them in a bucket. You're going to set your tarp out, and they're all going to land on the tarp, but they're not going to land in like a 3 foot by 3 foot square. And that's just a variation in the brass because it's worn.
Yeah, you're so right. There's so many little things. I mean, even down to like you said, variations in the powder, variations in the bullet diameter. Bullet diameter affects pressure, right? And then here's a big one, us. We're a big variable. Can I guarantee that I'm consistently gripping that pistol every time? No. Right? Even if the slide's pretty loose, if it's twisting one way versus twisting the other when it extracts. Yeah, but here's what's really funny. The 1911's the only pistol people give a rip about this. It's the only one. Every other gun, what was it? There was an old Beretta 92 that a friend of mine had, and that thing shot, it spit brass everywhere. Nobody blinked. As soon as you pull out a 1911, though, and it throws brass everywhere, it's like, oh no. It's just like, oh my gosh. I can't stand it. So this is a good question from David Weather. He said, do you think that T-Sauce quality will change with all the changes that are happening? I sure hope not. I mean, there's no way to know. Look, at the end of the day, it seems like T-Sauce, and by the way, just throwing it out there, I called it all the way. I said T-Sauce is trying to cut out the middleman. They want to become their own importer. It's exactly what they're doing. Now, here's the thing. SDS was a big driver of quality and design for T-Sauce, right? These companies worked together quite a bit, and I have that from inside sources. That is confirmed. Now that T-Sauce doesn't have that partnership and they're doing their own thing, we don't really know what they're going to do. Now, if they're smart, I think they're going to recognize that people want guns built to spec, quality materials, quality setups, and they're going to just stay on the track that they're doing. But look, at the end of the day, it's a corporation, and it's a big company, and there can be 3 or 4 ding-dongs at the top who think they have a good idea, and they can drive it right into the floor. So, unfortunately, I have no idea. But what I do notice is everybody who sold anything to do with T-Sauce through SDS, they're trying to clearance everything out because I think T-Sauce is ramping up and we're getting ready to see a bunch of stuff hit the market. In particular, I also have inside knowledge. The only thing I can say is something we've all wanted, we should be excited about, and that's all I will say. I almost just accidentally kicked and blocked somebody. Let's not do that. Let's see.
Well, the chat is filled with miscreants. So
that is true. That is true.
I take some policing.
Latigo Morgan says, I had 1911s in the Army, never had any trouble with the ones I was issued. Yeah, I mean, that's just the story, man. And look, a good example of that is everybody who's buying these CMP 1911s, these Rands and these old Colts from World War II. You're not looking at some like carefully tuned artisan pistol. These are factory produced, made quick, fast, and in a hurry, and they run. And
yeah, if you've seen the video, I think it was, I think they did the original recording at Union Switch and Signal, but they show them test firing the guns after they leave the production line, and I think they get literally 1 or 2 magazines.
Yeah,
it'd be a cool job to have. All these 1911s. You just shoot 1911s all day, but they didn't get any special treatment. They were cranking them out. They were basically safety checks.
Yep.
Does it feed? Does it extract? And, we're talking about hammer follow. Does it work like it's supposed to? They don't care if it has a 7 or 8 pound trigger, as long as it's reliable.
Quite literally. That's in the manual, that's an acceptable weight.
Yes, it is. Exactly.
In the 1964 manual. That is a fact.
So those 1911 A1s from World War II with the 4 or 5 companies that made them back then, they did not spend much time test firing them. They basically, okay, it runs through a couple of magazines. The hammer doesn't drop when it's not supposed to. Pack it up and ship it.
Out the door. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How many, just Remington ran alone, they made what, 2 million in a couple years?
Yeah, something like 1.8, 1.9 million themselves, I think. So.
In like 2 or 3 years.
Actually, I think it's more like about 900,000.
Yeah.
I think the total production for the war was 1.8 million.
So you just imagine, like, you don't have time to sit there and go, oh, this extractor's not correct. It's not tossing at 330 and 30 degrees. Like, get out of here, man. I just, oh my gosh, it makes me want to shoot blood out of my eyes.
Yeah, one more thing I mentioned earlier also with like extractor clocking is the firing pin stop, the plate in the back. That's something you can fit.
Yes.
If you're having extractor clocking, then you can fit a different plate back there and take care of that. So that's another area where there's a variance. You could have tolerance stacking, I'm sure they had that in World War II, producing 1.9 million 1911s or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But that's another area where you could have, something that's loose and it could affect your extraction because the extractor will clock a certain number of degrees.
Yep.
So there's a lot of variables there, but generally they'll run if the most important thing is the hook, that it's profiled correctly, in my opinion anyway. But that really, because it's also a part of your feeding.
Yes. And it's, now that's the part where I think if there's anything to make a big deal about, that's what I care the most about with an extractor is the feed. Because listen, that little hook, it's going to do its job. It's going to snatch that brass out of there. It's that bottom left corner sliding over the case and not impeding the feed of the cartridge into the chamber. That to me is the thing that does cause a good bit of problems. But again, I just asked the question. There should be millions upon millions of gunsmiths or gunsmith jobs. I mean, people lines out the door with extractor work if it was the case that 1911s don't work. And there's a guy down the street from me. He has a safe just for 1911s. That's all I haven't seen him in like 10 years. I mean, we're talking a refrigerator full of 1911s. He does not, and he shoots them a lot. He's not a gunsmith guy. He's a shooter, and he never has those problems. So, yeah, I reject it. Okay, Charles, update. He said, I put my T-Sauce sear in the one with the hammer follow. I cannot get it to do it now. I have dropped the slide 24 times in different ways. No longer an issue. Sear is the problem. There you go. It usually is. And I will bet you that the Jagweed who owned it before you thought he was a cool guy and took one of these and just thought, trigger job. You know, I've seen it.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, one guy I didn't buy it from him. It was on Tax Swap. He's like, it was listed as like gunsmith special. And he's like, I don't know what's wrong with it. It came this way from the factory, but the factory won't fix it. And it was a Springfield. I'm like, first of all, yes, Springfield will fix it. Yes, they will. They're actually very good about their warranty work. And I just asked him to send me a picture of the sear. It looked like Wolverine just scratched the hell out of the sear. I'm like, I know what happened. This guy should have his internet privileges revoked.
I've got one here. David Weathers, do you think guns sold through the CMP program are worth getting? I say yes. I just got a couple of them recently. I got a mostly complete Remington Rand, and I got another one which was a mutt, but it's no longer a mutt. It's another very nice Remington Rand. And
that first one was not an Arsenal rebuild, right?
Neither one have been Arsenal rebuilt. They have not been refinished.
It's amazing.
They are in very, very good. They have the original finish on them. Video coming up on those, so stand by for that.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yes, I think they're worth it. And a lot of people ask me, why haven't I done that yet? I mean, I'm sure I will at some point. I want one. It's just one, I kind of have like a hierarchy of wants. And that's never been at the top of my list. Just because when you get an older gun like that, look, there's people who go out and they shoot them lights out like crazy, and the guns run. But just look, the metallurgy is not the same. And at the end of the day, every 1911, no matter how special it's forged and all this stuff, everything has a shelf life. And buying a piece of history that will never come back and frag in the slide or the frame or something like that, that's why I have shot my Winchester 1907 3 times. 3 times in several years. Vintage guns, you got to be careful. You really got to be careful.
I will say, if you get a CMP 1911, and Traveler and I have talked about this, go easy on the old girls.
Yeah.
I would like to use basically the Lagarde loads.
Yeah.
Something mild like that. If you're a hand loader, find some loads for 230 grain ball and use a starting load. Get something like 750, 775 feet per second. It's a nice soft load. It'll cycle perfectly. It'll run just fine, and it's a lot easier on the guns.
Yep.
One thing you'll see on ones, especially if they've not been refinished, is you can see around parts of the frame where they flame hardened it. So unlike the World War I versions, which were not really hardened steel, not as we know it today, at least they were doing a few things in World War II. The guns are probably a little tougher, but still they're 85 years old. The newest ones are 85 years old, and with an unknown number of rounds through them. So they could be great shooters. I know a guy that had an Ithaca, and he shot the snot out of that. He was buying surplus ammo, burning 1,000 rounds a week out of it. And I said, dude, come on now. I said,
that's rough.
You're playing with fire. I said, that has a fair, it's an Ithaca, but it had a fair amount of collector value to it. And I just, used some light ammo for it, and go out, burn 100 rounds a couple times a year or something like that, but don't make it a primary shooter. Don't take it out every time you go shooting.
No.
Remember, they're not going to make them again.
That's right.
So it's a piece of history, and you're in the custody, it's in your custody now. So you can beat it up and blow it apart, or you can preserve it for somebody down the road.
Yeah.
So, I think we're just temporary custodians of what we have, especially something
100%.
historic like that. So
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I even see there's people who will send their, World War One 1911s off to like a custom guy, and he'll forge the pistol and all this stuff. And it's like, why are you doing that? It's like, it's really just for the roll marks. Let's be honest. That's what it's for. People are taking a piece of history and having it sent off and forged and refinished and cut on and putting Novak sights in it. Buh. And just like, we have lasers now. We can just recreate those roll marks. Ask me how I know. I don't know why people do that, but it's sad. It's the same thing with there was a guy on YouTube years ago who took a pre-war 1911, put a red dot on it, had it optic cut. I'm just like, gulags for that guy.
yeah.
Let's see here. Let me catch up on the chat. Service Rifle 16. This is a very good point. Most of those 1911s never saw combat anyway. That's very true. It's very true. I mean, they all got shot. Let's be very clear. People were allowed to shoot them. They were required to qualify with them, things like that. But it's true. A lot of these CMP guns, they may have sat in holsters, and that's all they did. For some, I'll tell you, my great-granddad, he's passed away a long time ago. He was in World War II. He carried a 1911. And, he used it in combat one time. But, other than that, he shot it at boot. He shot it over in Europe. And he used it in combat once. That's it. And he had that gun for his whole military career. So it's a very, very true point. It's not like people are going out and doing direct action missions with their GI 1911s. That wasn't happening.
No, that's an excellent point. Is that the 1.9 million or whatever were made in World War II, except for the ones that might have been in the training commands at boot camps.
Yep.
That had a lot of rounds through them. You got to figure most of those 1911 A1s, you're right, they were in a holster somewhere. And even ones used in combat, think about it. They might have had a few hundred rounds at the most through them.
Yeah, maybe.
From, the A1s were out in 43, and they really ramped up to production in 44 and 45. So a lot of them were issued for maybe 1 to 2 years.
Yep.
And even guys in combat probably, remember, it's a sidearm. It's kind of your last resort.
That's right.
Weapon, So I'd be willing to bet that the greater percentage of them probably had only a few hundred rounds at the most through them.
Yep.
So, yeah, the two that I got from the CMP, they're not rattle traps like I remember from when I first joined the military. They're surprisingly tight. So I know that they're low mileage, so to speak.
Yeah.
So,
which is that's so cool.
And that's what that's what you look for. Say you're a guy into revolvers. You would like to find a nice Model 10 or Model 19 that was a cop's gun. What's the saying? Carried a lot and shot a little.
That's right.
They'll have holster wear, but mechanically they're usually in excellent condition because they didn't shoot them much. And I think that's what you'll find with the 1911 A1s from the CMP.
I completely agree. That was the case with my Remington 870. I bought that thing on Gun. I can't say the whole website's name. Broker. You got to split that up or else we'll get fragged. But I found that on there. And man, this was one of those steals where you hit buy now and you don't think. So it was a Remington 870. It was a police trade-in, but it was brand new. it still had the sticker, the big oval sticker on the stock. Like the gun was mint except for one spot, and you could see it was where it had been in a cruiser, and it had that little C-clamp on the top of the rifle. And so I got that sucker for $180. Like, stole it. And when I got it in, I was just like, dude, this thing it's probably never been fired. So, let's see here. HVAC R tool nut. How's Blue doing? Good, man. I want to do a video, but it's so hard to. Like, I could do it if everybody was in one room and you could feel these triggers. But, man, there's something about the trigger on Blue when you were here. It was a little heavy when we were out shooting it. And especially we were shooting it against my pre-war Colt reproductions. And I was just like, we go from shooting that and then shooting your guns, the Mark IVs and everything's great. Then you pick up Blue and it was just like, oh, man, that's kind of heavy. So we just took it apart there on the bed of my truck. And, yanked on the leaf spring a little bit, threw it back together. That's literally how scientific it was. It was just like, just bent the spring back and threw it back together. And it was like, boom, perfect trigger. And we shot it back to back against the pre-wars because I think those are the best triggers on the planet ever. Indiscernible, the difference. Like, they're identical. So I love that pistol. I love Blue. That is one of the best shooting pistols. Weirdly, it is the one, that one and the Watchman both ate our lunch with the hammer bite. Man, they ate us up.
Yeah, if you recall from the video also, little assessment at the end, we had the top three.
Yeah.
And the top three were your pre-war and Blue and Matt's gun.
100%.
And Blue initially probably wouldn't have been in that top three without the little adjustment that we made out on the range. But the other thing, I put quite a few rounds through it, including some Lagarde loads. It's just a sweet shooting gun.
Yeah.
It's smooth. It's reliable. It just runs. And the trigger is everything that you could want.
Yeah.
And it took longer to take it apart than it did to actually make the little adjustment.
It's true. It was such a...
Yeah, it's really true.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, but I can vouch for it. Blue is a fantastic gun. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, you're the only other human ever that has shot it. No, that's not true. One other buddy of mine shot it. That's not true. But yeah, it's just the configuration that it's in. I'm not touching it. That gun that's what it's going to be forever.
Yeah, I remember when you did the last bluing job on it, and then you put the grips on it, and the first thing I thought, you've got an interwar 1911.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, you're right, absolutely. It's what it looks like.
Yeah.
It looks like a gun that was made maybe in the late 20s or in the 30s.
Mm-hmm. Was
used a bit, got a little bit of finish wear on it. Mechanically, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And, that day that we shot, remember we were looking at some bad weather, which it held off.
Yeah.
Literally, as we were leaving, it started to rain going down the driveway. So I got to see Blue in the sunshine. And that's another thing too, is that the finish on that is really nice.
Yeah.
It's just a great gun all the way around, and whether it's a T-Sauce or a Colt or maybe something that Nighthawk built or pick somebody else, it's a great gun by anybody's standard.
Yeah. It's just like an accidental convergence of parts because I didn't do a ton of tuning on that gun. Like the thumb safety is what came with it, and that's how it came out of the box. Now, granted, I got this gun used from somebody, but that guy didn't do anything to it. He didn't know a thing.
Yeah.
It's got the stock sear. I've done nothing to it. It does have a numeric hammer, which I got to say, I was so thrilled when Numeric reached out to me and was like, hey, can we feature your stuff on our website? I'm like, are you freaking kidding me, man? Like, I'm like, I love you guys. Of course you can. And we went back and forth, and then they emailed me and let me know, like, hey, you know, it's live, and what an honor. That was cool. But, yeah, other than that, internally, that gun is stock. And it just runs, man. It's fantastic.
Well, there's another thing. When I got my ASF and I joined the TSOS club, you know, we talked about it, and I left everything stock, except because I have several of them. I put an original World War II trigger in it, just because it's a little more authentic than what TSOS gives you. But sear, disconnector, hammer, everything in that gun is factory.
Yeah.
I did change the springs, the recoil spring at least. I changed the recoil spring. The sear spring was nice. I left that in there.
Me too. Yep.
So, but I did not tune the action at all. Didn't touch it.
That's the thing, man, is if TSOS can just keep that. The last ASF I got, and yours, and a buddy of mine, and another buddy of mine, so 4 of them. I've experienced 4 that were made just very recently. They're perfect minus the recoil spring. They're set up, man. The leaf springs are tuned exactly how they should be. The triggers are exactly what they should feel like. They're super crispy, great, no creep. I mean, everything about those guns, that is the best 1911 factory level GI pistol you can ask for. They're phenomenal. Let's see here. Let's keep going on some comments. So Stonge 327, I think I'm saying that wrong, I'm sure. I just want my TSOS ASF to spit brass somewhat to the right instead of straight back in my face. Yeah, that's a standard ejection port thing. It's very characteristic. Honestly, you know, you should join, if you're not a member of the Patreon. I've got a video on Patreon on how to tune an extractor. It's very, very easy to do. But that's how to do it. That's how to solve that problem. It's just an extractor thing.
Yeah, he's also talking about angle on the ejector. I'll tell you what, I've never messed with an ejector. I've never done anything. I've had one gun that had an extended ejector, but I took it off and put a standard ejector on it. The gun has always run fine.
Yep.
I've never messed with that angle. I know people do. Yeah, that's another thing that you can fine tune if you want to. But once again, if it runs, it runs.
Yep.
If it gets to the point of where it's not running, especially if it's had a lot of rounds through it, there might be some wear on some parts.
Yep.
But yeah, I see the comment here. I don't even want to get into trying to tune the angle on the ejector. In 40 years or so of working on these, I've never had to do it.
Not once.
And not once. I haven't. It has to do one thing. It just has to, you know, when the slide comes back and the extractor has a grip on that piece of brass, that ejector just needs to be there just for the brass to hit it.
Yeah.
You know, that's all. Yeah, you can tune it. You can put an angle on it. Might be necessary on other calibers. I don't know. Might be desirable on something else, maybe a 38 Super or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, some guns have extended ejectors on them. Maybe that's where you need to think about tuning. But on a 45, I've never had to do it, never wanted to do it. Mine have always worked.
Yeah, same. That's something I've never. I mean, man, I even had my Springfield that I still have. That one at one point had a super loosey-goosey ejector. I mean, it was shockingly loose. Gun ran fine. You know, I did end up putting a new ejector in there just to tighten it up. But it's not an ejector problem. That's an extractor problem. Especially, like I said, when you get to the standard ejection ports, which the ASF has, you know, I mean, think about it. So you got the top of the ejection port here, and then you got the other side here. When it's lowered and flared, it opens way up, right? And so it has room to go out into the side. The fact that it's kind of pointing straight up means it can only go really straight up unless that extractor's really pushing on it to get it to spin out to the right. So it's a thing. It's very easy to fix. In fact, at the Patreon gathering, JRK brought his gun, and we just did it right there at the table. No tools required. I just used my little multi-tool. No big deal. Let's see. Charles said both guns are back together, and the Springer is waiting on a new sear. Awesome, man. Yeah, man. That's in my favorite, just middle of the road, super cheap, almost always available sear is the Wilson Combat Factory Plus. Yes, it's a MIM part. I know, but man, they're $15. You can get them on Amazon. I'm not joking, and they're great sears. The angles are perfect, and you know, I mean, you look, if you want to, you can spend a lot of money on sears, and they're worth it. I've got a Nighthawk sear and disconnector in my 1991. What did I just put a sear in? I've got Wilson Combat Bulletproof in several. I mean, I've spent some money on sears, but honestly, for just a carry gun, a GI 1911, the Wilson Combat sears, Colt sears are, even though, again, they're MIM, the angles are good as long as the relief cut's been done, which aren't always done. Who else makes good sears?
I have 3 guns right here. I have a stock of sears.
Yeah.
I'm very partial to EGW. I know that you just used a Harrison sear.
That's who I was trying to think about. Dang.
On the
Yes.
Kimber.
Yes.
Harrison, and then cylinder and slide.
Yep.
In fact, I was just working with some cylinder and slide parts today,
Yeah.
and any of those are fantastic. I have a Wilson bulletproof sear here in the box right now as we speak, so I don't talk about them a whole lot. Their parts are great. I have no issue with them.
Yep.
I have not used the Factory Plus sear myself. I'd never even heard of it until I started watching your videos.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, they're really good. Ed Brown's another one. My Springfield has an Ed Brown in it and has for years. You know, look, I think probably top of my list is probably going to be Harrison and Nighthawk. Harrison, man, cylinder and slide, Harrison and Nighthawk. Those are really equal to me because, first of all, they make a big deal about telling you this is made properly. They tell you that it's forged and it's machined after forging, and like they tell you all the right things. The edges are just cut. Man, I feel like you could just take like a microscope and look at that edge and it would just look perfect. The materials are really solid. Now, I will be honest, I've never purchased a Nighthawk product in my life until a few months ago when I bought that sear and disconnector. They're awesome. Awesome. Like, the trigger in my 1991, oh my Lord. It's as good as... It feels a little different because the trigger shoe's a little loose. It's got that stock shoe in it. But man, wait till you feel it. It feels just like the pre-wars. It's got that sharp percussive fall off. It's really
one
nice.
thing I like with cylinder and slide is they are Rockwell tested, and they actually send you a little card that shows that it was Rockwell tested and what the Rockwell number was.
Yes.
Parts are fantastic, and they
They're
usually
awesome.
are literally are drop-in parts.
Yeah.
And I'm going to second the Ed Brown also. I have a Colt here. It's a Frankenstein that I built 15 years ago. And the frame was gutted. So back at that time, it was like, I want the best parts I could find, which you had the Wilson Bulletproof
Mm-hmm.
and Ed Brown, which I think at the time they were called Hardcore or something else. Maybe that's what they call them now. But
Yeah.
all of the internals on that Colt are Ed Brown, and they're fantastic. That
Yeah.
that gun's been shot plenty. It's had a great trigger from day one, so it's worth it, even if it's like the what is it, the Factory Plus that you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to spend $35 or $45 on a sear if you can get a nice one for 20 or whatever those are. 15,
Well,
20 bucks.
and that's the thing is like I know their MIM forged is obviously better. However, they last a good long time, and you really got to shoot that gun a lot to wear them down. But here's another sear, one of the best sears out there, T-Sauce.
Yes.
The stock T-Sauce sears, all forged. What's the word? They're cut after hardening. Gosh, I can't think. Those sears, the angles, the materials, the hardening, the process, perfect. Perfect. I mean, and I'm like, I don't even know how many T-Sauces. Let's just say conservatively 25 have been here on this bench. Post 2022, which is when they instituted their all forged program. They're freaking perfect. Like, and that's why anymore I will not put in new sears in a T-Sauce. The way they come, they're perfect.
Yeah, when you look at them, they don't look like much because they're all Parkerized, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're Cerakoted or not, but they're at least Parkerized. They've got a phosphate finish, so they don't look like something. You go on the websites and look at some sear that's $30,
Yeah.
and it's nice and shiny, and it's.
Right.
But the T-Sauce sear doesn't look like much, but that's part of the greatness of it. Is
Yeah.
It's made to spec. So
Yes.
I don't know what's going to happen. None of us do. But before, you could go on their website and they had a lot of parts for sale,
Yeah.
and hammers, sears, barrels.
I hope they open that back up, man.
And I hope they continue. I hope they add to the number of parts they have available, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to experiment with and play around with, because, I never would have ever thought I would own one of those.
Yeah.
But they're too good not to own,
It's true.
you know.
Well, yeah, man, I wish there's a couple things I wish they'd open up. I mean, they already sold the triggers and the hammers, which is really cool. I actually like their triggers. I've got several of their short triggers. But the things I wish they would open up, really two big ones. One is ASF slides. If they would sell just ASF slides, they could sell those for $200 a piece, which is like half the cost of the entire pistol. So they're making loads of bags on that. And we would buy them because they're like the perfect old school platform to have like laser engraved or something like that, or customize a bit. And then the other thing is their long triggers, which come in the Raider. Long triggers are hard to come by anymore. They're just not a lot of them floating around out there. And this dovetails us into this question from Texas Pete. He said, Raider content to come. Looks like you trust the gun enough so far. Yeah, that video drops tomorrow. And that one comes with a long trigger. Now, it's a serrated trigger, and I hate serrated triggers. I really don't like them. This one is perfect. It's like the serrations actually do their job. They're not cut too deep. They're not cheesy. They're not gaudy. You don't even notice them until you actually kind of angle the pistol right and go, oh yeah, there's serrations there. If they would sell those, oh my, they wouldn't be able to keep them in stock.
Here's one we need to address because we're right in the ballpark right
Please.
now.
Yeah.
HVACR tool nut. He wants to know what's the difference between the ASF and the U.S. Army. The ejection port seems the same. It's not the same.
That's right.
Um,
There's a few distinct differences. One is the ASF is Parkerized and really well done, that Parkerizing. The ASF has a standard ejection port, and there's another one. I can't remember what that is. But basically, their sort of middle of the road standard gun is lowered ejection port, and it's Parkerized. So now the standard gun, I tell people often, if you're looking for like a concealed carry gun that you can sweat on and really abuse, just get the Cerakoted one. Bypass the whole corrosion problem. That Cerakote's fantastic. And those guns, even though the ejection port's lowered, it's done the right way. It's very tasteful. It's a very minimalist lowering. It's not flared. It's not gaudy. But internally, everything else, they're identical to the ASF. The ASF's really cosmetic to make it look like a Remington Rand. So.
yeah, the U.S. Army model, I think that's the one that PSA was occasionally running for like 279 chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
I mean, an amazing deal on that. And like you pointed out, it's Cerakoted. So, you live in those hot, humid environments or you sweat a lot, it's a very durable finish. Where you're going to find a good quality, built to spec 1911 for under $300.
It's crazy.
And if the gun was $150 more, it would still be a value.
Yep. Nobody else is touching them still. Let's see here. T. Burkhoff says no TSOS ASFs are available anywhere right now. Yeah, it's because there's a big gap in the importing. And look, this whole Iran conflict thing, Turkey is affected by this. They're embroiled in this. That shipping lane involves them. So it's just a bad time to be TSOS right now. I'm sure they're struggling, but give it time. I'm sure we're going to see a massive dump of pistols into the U.S. Pretty soon. In fact, wasn't the NRA show, isn't that going on right now?
I think it might be. I'm not sure. Or at least maybe it was recently.
Very recent, yeah. And TSOS was there, I think. So, anyway. Yeah, no, C-Man, he said TSOS still has a lot of parts available, right? No. Their website, they pretty much went, they took everything down. I don't know if it's back up, but I think they're trying to do a hard reset, and this is my guess. I think they're going to try to come back with a bang, and they're going to not only come back with good inventory, they've got a new website, but also I think they're going to come back with new models that are going to blow people away. So I really hope they stick with the ASF is the one pistol they can't change. They got to that needs to stay exactly how it is.
Yeah, exactly. Follow on with that. Kits with blank slides would be so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've got a blank canvas there. Like you said, have the ASF slide available for a couple hundred or whatever.
Yeah.
As just a part. I have one of the slides from CDNN, which has the lowered ejection port, and it's a Series 80. The machining on it's fantastic. I bought it because it was $60 and I could experiment. Right now I'm doing some work with finishing.
Yeah.
And but that's a great slide for the money also. But yeah, if they would offer the ASF slide, don't change anything on it, and just offer it as it is as a separate component you can buy off the website, that would be fantastic. You find somebody that does the laser engraving, and the sky's the limit.
Truly. Oh man, if they offered them in the white too, that would be.
Yeah, really like a gunsmith part.
Yep.
fully machined but not finished.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just love what they do, man. And it's I'm excited for what they're going to come back with. But you just look at their body of work so far. They're making the best GI 1911 on the market ever, and I'm willing to say that. That ASF is just the perfect GI 1911. They're making a better Colt M45 than Colt ever dreamt of. That Raider is so good. It's such a good pistol. They're making guns that look like Wilson Combats that are beautiful and run and are reliable and are well made. I'm not saying they're the same as Wilsons. I know, because the guys who own Wilsons are going to go fork-eyed at that. But, like, they're just doing it so well. And you know who they remind me of is, like, it's kind of like Islander watches. You know, you take, like, what Seiko does, and I love Seiko. But, you know, we've talked about this, and Mark with Islander Watches has talked about this, how, like, you know, sometimes the Seikos, like, the bracelets are a little janky, and they don't have sapphire crystals, and there's just these little things. It's like, man, you could just take that last step and go all the way, and he does it. You know, that's what, by the way, we didn't do a wrist check, did we? That's what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing the Islander Manhasset today. What you got?
I have the Islander Babylon Field Watch with the Haviston strap.
Which that watch is so light. It's so lightweight.
It's titanium.
Yeah.
Sapphire crystal, titanium. It's got a solar Miyota movement in it. And I think the strap probably weighs about as much as the watch head does.
Truly.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So that's what I feel like Mark with Islander did, is he like here's Seiko, and he just went boop and just like made them exactly what they should be. And he does that across the board. Like, they're incredible watches. And
yeah, I like to say that he out Seiko'd Seiko.
Very much so. Yeah, you have said that before. That's a
Beat them at their own game.
Yeah.
I see Wyoming Gun Project is in the house. I don't know if he commented earlier, but welcome aboard, Matt.
Yeah, man. Yeah, he said T-Sauce better than Colt. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going to have to shoot that Raider at our next range session.
Yeah.
Now, I always said that if I ever shot a 1911 with a rail, I would burst into flames. But I'm willing to take the risk on that. So
listen, it's I mean, I everybody watch the video tomorrow, but I will just say, look, the Raider is not. It's a 1911. Like, under the hood, it's the same thing as all the other guns we love. However, it's really well done. It looks good. It feels really good. It shoots great. And, you know, the frames don't crack like Colt M45s, and they don't cost $5,000 like Colt M45s. They've got a standard rail, unlike the M45. Like, I love that T-Sauce was just like, nana nana boo boo, boink, poke you in the eye, ha ha ha. Just, they made such a better gun than Colt could have even dreamt of. So, yeah, service rifle. Does the finish flake off on the Raider? No, it doesn't. It's actually quite good. Let's see here. Yeah, man, everybody's been... I think I'm probably 200 emails, comments, and messages deep on people telling me about the Musoc on clearance on PSA. I know. I want to buy one, believe me, but it's hard for me to justify because, like, look, it's a great gun, but my Springfield is literally like, it's a Musoc. And now I'm just stacking Musocs, and you know, what's my review going to say? That's what it's going to be. I'm just going to go, there it is. It's another T-Sauce, so with different clothes on, essentially. So Would love to, but it's just not top of the list right now. Latigo Morgan said Kimber prices are really dropping. Yeah, I don't quite understand how Kimber is putting out guns for the price that they are. I really don't understand, because they're quite good anymore. Like the recent Kimber guns that I've experienced and heard about are quite good. So, yeah, I don't know how they're getting cheaper. It doesn't make sense. I mean, well, I take that back. I kind of do, and it's because they're buying in the cheapest parts possible in some areas. MIM slide stops, plastic mainspring housings, plastic. No, I don't think they're doing shoes yet. But look, at the end of the day, their triggers, thumb safety fit, barrel fit, slide to frame fit is excellent. They are really, really good. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was impressed with the Kimber when I shot it.
Yeah.
I look at Kimbers the way I look at a Springfield Garrison or Mill spec. Good frame, good slide, good barrel.
Yep.
Personally, I would junk everything inside if I plan to shoot it a lot.
Yep.
Whether it's a Garrison, a Mill spec, or any of the Kimbers. I just consider the internals to be substandard. If you're going to go out and shoot a couple hundred rounds a year and you're not going to carry it, then I would say you're fine.
Yeah.
But I don't have anything that I don't carry except for one, a 1914 Colt.
Yes.
So I don't want MIM parts in a carry gun. So I just look at it that way. And, it might be something that you want to change out. We already talked about good sears and disconnectors and things.
Yep.
So I agree with you. I think that's how Kimber is getting that price down so low.
Yeah.
But the basic foundation of the gun is excellent. I was extremely, extremely impressed with yours.
Yeah.
So yeah, not a convert yet, but something I would consider in the future possibly.
Yeah, I mean, if I was looking to buy a 1911 right now, Kimber probably wouldn't be in my top 3, maybe not even in my top 5. I just think there's a lot of good options out there. If you're going to run a Kimber, I think minimum you got to change the mainspring housing. The plastic it can't stay. That's terrible. The slide stop pin, that's a high stress part. It's a very important part. Those are MIM. I would put a Wilson bulletproof in there personally, and did on the one that I had. And I also got rid of those absolutely retarded hex screws, the Allen screw. No, I put in some stainless flathead screws as God intended. I wanted to go back though. Who said something about I saw the there it is. It was Texas Pete. Of course it was. He's one of us. He's one of us.
Yeah, he is. He noticed the Manhasset.
Yeah, there's the Manhasset, which my camera is going to make it look like I'm filming through a potato. But yeah, it's vintage Explorer vibes all the way. While we're here talking watches, I also have here the, which it's got parts on the way, so it's not assembled, but the new, who makes this? The Miltato 08, which is the Hamilton Murph ripoff, and it's incredible. So just a couple things about this one. First of all, it showed up. The time was already plugged in, to the second, which I thought nobody does that. That's kind of cool. Sapphire crystal, domed, really good, classic. Really nice polishing on top around the bezel. Really nice brushed on the sides. 316 stainless. Screw-in crown. Seiko. It's the VH series quartz movement.
It's the VH 157, I think, is what it has in it. But
sounds right.
it's a great movement. Great movement.
Yeah, 11 millimeters thick, including the what's it called? The sapphire or the crystal. So this watch is just like really well done, and it's $80. Like, sorry, that's. I had one guy email me and just enraged that I'm hurting Hamilton's business because I didn't buy the Murph, and I'm like, listen, man, I get it, okay, but look, I can buy this, which has a stainless case, a solid movement, a sapphire crystal, and it's identical to the Murph, or I can spend $1,000 and feel good on the inside that I bought a Hamilton. I'm sorry, I'm too pragmatic for that. Like, it's the same thing with, like, you know, the ratios, all the watches we love. It's like, or this, you know, like, am I going to go buy a vintage Explorer, or am I going to get this and be perfectly happy? So there you go.
Well, here's one that gets a lot of wrist time here.
The Turtle.
The Turtle. This thing's a tank. It's bulletproof.
It's a good looking watch.
And it is one of the most comfortable watches you will ever wear. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's see here. T. Burkhoff, what polymer frame guns do you like? Glock. And that's where I mean, look, I think I'm going to paint with some broad strokes here, but the Glock 17, 19, and 26, all the 9mm, 3 sizes of pistol. In addition to that, I'd throw in the Glock 30S, which is a 45 cal, slightly slimmer 8-shot Glock. Basically, the Glock 19 is what everyone's been trying to be since the 80s. I mean, look at what everybody sells right now. The P07 is trying to be a Glock. The Palmetto, what is it? The Dagger, trying to be a Glock. You just go down the list. Every single company is selling a 15-shot, mid-sized, and here's what's even crazier. A lot of these, they're so dead on. They might use Glock mags. They fit in Glock holsters. And to me, I'm like, what's the point of getting these other pistols? Okay, you just like the company. You like the brand. Okay, whatever. The fact is, Glock is just proven. And everybody wants to be Glock, so why not just use Glock? That said, I think the only ones that have actually done something different, unique, worthwhile, just stylistically, are M&Ps. The M&P is a very American DNA pistol, and I'll be honest with you guys, I've recorded this video that I'm telling you right now 3 times and deleted it because I just didn't like it. But when you look at an M&P, first of all, you have a very American grip angle. It's very close to that 107 that the 1911 is running. You don't have any of the finger grooves or anything. It's a very American grip, which typically, historically, American grips have not been having finger grooves. It's a very European thing, having all these like big hand contours. It just works really well. And then the lines on the slide, the way it has those cuts, and you know, it's different, it's unique, and the guns run really well. That said, though, it's like, you know, people all the time are like, well, what about this one? I'm like, Glock 19. Yeah, but this one, Glock 19. Like, I'm sorry. It's just, I just don't see the point of any of the other
There's
guns.
one out now that I have some interest in. I think I'm going to pick one up, and that's the Ruger RXM.
I've heard a lot of that. Yeah.
And the reason I like it is because it does not have the Glock grip angle.
Mm.
And that interests me because I think I would enjoy it more. But I have recommended the Glock 19 to more people by far than any other handgun. It's just, you don't need to do anything to it. You don't need to buy all the aftermarket parts. Just buy it and run it. They got it right from the beginning. It's about as perfect as you're going to find. in size and capacity. It has everything you need.
Yep.
So, like I said, I've recommended that to more people than anything. And I only carry 1911s or maybe a high power once in a while. I don't even carry a Glock, but I
Yep.
recommend them. But that new Ruger, I'm kind of curious about that. I want to play around with that a little bit. So
That is the number one gun that people are like, and I even see it here in the chat. People are saying that one is a good competitor. But, look, at the end of the day, I don't carry Glocks really either. It's funny. It's my backup gun. I have a bag that I carry around with me. A Glock 19 is my backup. It's always with me. But my primary, is either 1911s or high powers. And same thing. I don't recommend people to get 1911s. I tell them to get Glocks. Because unless they're going to do what we do and you're going to become the mechanic of your pistol, 1911's not for you. But
yeah,
the
we
Glock
talked
19.
about it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. Go ahead, please.
Like I said, we talked about that before, and I think it might have been Larry Vickers that said it's an enthusiast pistol.
Yep.
So if you're not going to learn the gun, if you just want a blaster for the weekend to go out and blow 50 or 100 rounds. But I have a friend that has a Norinco, and it had been like 21 or 22 years that he had it, and it had never been detail stripped because he didn't know how. And it had been shot a lot.
Yeah.
And it still ran perfectly. But, if you're not going to invest the time into learning the gun, buy one as a shooter, have fun with it.
Yep.
But don't carry it.
Truly.
Buy a Glock 19 and then save your money and buy lots of ammo and get good with the Glock 19.
Yep. And to the point about modifying, like my Glock, the only thing that's not standard on it are the sights. They're Trijicon Brighton Tufts because I happen to have them in stock like freaking 8 years ago. But even then, I'm like, man, my Glock 26, I've run that gun a good bit, carried it a lot as like an ankle gun or a backup gun. They still got the Glock plastic sights on it. You don't need to do disconnectors. You don't need to polish this. Oh my gosh, all that stuff. Leave it alone. You don't need extended anything. The guns, any generation, by the way. I'm not, I personally prefer Gen 4 for a few reasons, but they all run. Even look, I know a guy who concealed carries a Gen 2 Glock 17. I mean, he can put 1,000,000 rounds through that pistol and it's going to still be there. So, and look, I see Texas Pete, he said he has the P10C. I've owned 2 of those. And I sold them because I'm like, it's just a Glock 19. Now, look, what I can appreciate is maybe the grip textures to your liking, the grip angles to your liking. You can grip, your wife can grip the slide better. I know somebody who just got a gun because of that reason. I'm not saying anybody's dumb for picking anything else, but if you're asking me, I just don't, because I look at Glocks a lot more like tools than I do 1911s. 1911s I look at like a samurai sword. It has a soul, there's more to them. Whereas a Glock is like a hatchet. It's just this is a much more of a blunt instrument, and then when people try to compare, hammers, I'm like, stop. Let's see. Yes, a lot of people saying the Glock 45. Yeah, even that. The difference between that and a 19 is the width of a saltine cracker. So, I'm sorry. If that's breaking you from carrying, there's bigger problems. I even those, I know, I get it. They're super slim and everything, but I don't know. Just not for me. Listen, I'm a bummer to talk about Glocks with because I'm super boring with it. It's just like Glock 19. I just always going to come back to that. Now, I will say the P10C that I had years ago, it did have a very nice trigger. It did have a nice trigger. But as much as people complain about the grip angle with the Glocks, and I would too, because I like the American-ish grip angle, for whatever reason, I just shoot Glocks lights out. No problems. I've never really had that issue.
Yeah, I hate the grip angle on them, but I shoot them well.
Yeah.
But I don't like how they feel in the hand. And looking down the slide is like looking down the deck of an aircraft carrier.
That's funny.
But the guns run,
Yeah.
and I shoot them well. So even though they're not the most comfortable thing, I mean, I'm a 1911 guy, but we talked about this earlier. The best thing that I shoot for comfort is a high power.
Truly.
It's perfect as far as ergonomics for me.
Oh, listen. Oh, that I should do that video. High power versus a Glock 19. Thank you. I'm going to do that video. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm putting those against each other, let me just go ahead and spoil that video right now. High power. It's not even close. Not even close. High power all day. Like, the trigger. As much as I give high powers hell for having funky triggers, it's way better than a Glock. It's all steel. Like, so you can use it as an implement to bludgeon things with. The action is buttery smooth. The gun is super slim. They weigh about the same. They're not that far off in weight. I'm taking a high power every day of the week. Glocks have their place, but usually when you start talking about Glock, people just like, my least favorite is, well, if I fall down in the mud, I'm like, Glocks don't function with mud in the action either. That's what's funny. No guns function with mud in their action. That is just a weird thing. This is a good question here. Do either of you have experience with the Walther PPQ 45 ACP? No, I've held one. Really, the only thing that I'm really interested in from Walther is their PPK series. I know a guy who's really into his PPQ. Look, if it works for you and you can run it well, then you should run it. But again, I'm going to default back to, I'm kind of stodgy and boring about polymer guns. It's like Glock 19. What's the point? Now, if you really want to dip into different calibers, like if you're going for a 45 ACP Glock, if size doesn't matter, the 21 is a fantastic shooting pistol. If size does matter, the 30S cannot be beat. It's about the size of a Glock 19, a little smaller, but you got 8 rounds of 45 in the mag.
Yeah, I have quite a bit of experience with a 21, and I like it. It's a gun I would carry if I were going to carry a Glock.
Yeah.
I could get away with carrying something that size. But yeah, PPQ, know somebody that has one, runs like a Rolex. They love it.
Yep.
Good gun. I'll never own one probably. It's outside of my wheelhouse, like a lot of these are.
Yep.
But yeah, I wouldn't criticize anybody for their choice. So I used to be into PPKs and PPKSs back in the old days. And those are more like my kind of Walthers.
Yeah.
Just like I went through my SIG phase with a 220 and a 226 and a 228.
Yep.
Back when they made good guns. And but yeah, by all accounts that I know, PPQ is a great gun. I just don't have any personal experience with it.
Yeah, I will say, I had a SIG M11A1. That's a great gun. And I mean a great gun. It's a little thick. It's fat, left to right. But man, it's just that old school 2.2 series trigger, double action, single action. and oh my gosh, it's just buttery smooth. 15-shot magazines. I sold it to my buddy John, and he's a big SIG guy, and that's one that hurts to think about that I let go because those are fantastic pistols.
Yeah, my P220, that one hurts.
Yeah,
That thing was fantastic. It was back so old when they said made in West Germany. So stamp slide, it was fantastic.
yeah,
And
yeah. I really like the even same with Glocks. I like the Gen 2s where it doesn't have the rail on the front. It's just smooth. Because I don't put lights on Glocks anyway. I just think it's fantastic.
yeah, what was it they came out with, the P80 or something that was Lipsies or something?
Yes.
And
yeah.
I wish I had jumped on that train because
Me too.
that's the kind of Glock I want.
Me too.
I don't want finger grooves and adjustable back straps or
No.
whatever, 5 different things to fine tune it. And I don't want forward slide serrations on it or cocking serrations. And I don't need a light rail.
Nope.
But I just like to have something classic like the original P80 or G17, first, second generation, something like that.
Yeah. The second gens to me, they have the same draw as like a solid A2 M16.
Exactly.
There's just there. It's like they kind of nailed it right there. Just stop. Yeah, Seaman said it well. He's like, polymer striker fired guns are all like different manufacturers' take on the same economy car. Boring, efficient Tupperware. That's why there's no real romance. That's why I said the M&P's the only one that's like feels like, because everybody like saw the Glock 19 and then they're just in line like a bunch of little ducks trying to follow the Glock 19. M&P's the only one that was like, okay, we see your striker fired polymer frame thing, but we're going to do a completely different trigger system. We're going to change the grip angle. We're going to change the grip texture. We're going to change the slide profile. Just everything, man. Like, it's just like they Americanized the concept. But even the striker fired thing, like John Moses Browning was making striker fired guns before anybody thought about it. Like in fact, the original high power was supposed to be a striker fired pistol. So, fun fact. Let's see. So we'll take a few more questions here, and then we'll start rolling it in. And oh man, Donald said I got the G17L Gen 1 Lipsies. That is super cool.
Yeah,
super cool. Let's see. 86309 says, why does Wilson Combat say the 16-pound recoil spring for the 5-inch 1911 is only rated for... listen, the people think Wilson Combat, that because Bill Wilson said it, it is fact. It's not fact. Here's a fact. I can tell you a fact. The 1911 has been running 16-pound recoil springs for 100 plus frickin' years. There's a fact. And the 1911s are still around. All of this, shoot low stuff, shoot light stuff, 18-pound springs. That is novel. That is a new invention, okay? And it's not me saying I know more than Bill Wilson. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying here's a fact. This is novel. People doing all this stuff and acting like it's normal. I'm sorry. No. Like, 16-pound springs is what belongs in a 1911. Now, there are cases to be made for using an 18-pound spring, but here's what a lot of people don't realize. Heavier recoil springs make the gun hit you harder. They increase the recoil. They do not reduce recoil. Okay, so that's a whole topic. I've made 1,000 videos on that. But yeah, look, if you just shoot regular old ball with a 16-pound Wilson or Wolf recoil spring. You're going to be fine. All of that pressures and no, just the gun. We have 114 years of data on this. Jury's out. I'm not going to hear anybody try to tell me different. If this gun just came out last week and somebody said that, I'd be like, okay, maybe they have a point. No, we already know.
Let me throw this out there also.
Yes.
I've got the my original 1991 Colt, 25,000 plus rounds through it, and it's only ever had basically GI springs, 16-pound recoil. I tried some 18.5s in it, just to try it out to see what all the hubbub was about. I didn't like how it shot.
Yep.
So I had very few number of rounds with that. So the gun has 25,000 rounds basically with the 16-pound recoil spring. And there is zero frame battering on that.
Zero. I saw it myself.
I mean zero. You've seen it yourself. Yep. And you got to remember what's contacting the frame inside there. The metal, the steel recoil spring guide. That's what's making the contact there on the frame. So when you put your shock buff in, that's not buffering that part against the frame. It's the buffering the front of the slide when it comes back. So that Colt that I bought in 1993 with all those rounds through it shows zero frame battering. Yep. With a 16-pound spring. If you know the history of some of the Musoc pistols, it was not uncommon to shoot 50,000 rounds during workups before deployment. 50,000 rounds.
Yep.
Now, to my knowledge, the only time that the Marines ever had trouble with frame cracking was when they drilled the frames to put a light rail on them.
That's correct.
Now, I could be wrong, and if anybody knows, throw it out there. I'm not an expert. But what I understand is those things would go through tens of thousands of rounds. I don't know what springs they put in them. Maybe they went up a little bit in spring weight, but they were using World War II frames. Those guns were built off 1943, 44, 45 frames, which are not considered up to today's metallurgy.
Yeah. And
they were burning tens of thousands of rounds through them. So I'm just saying, to go up in recoil spring weight a couple of pounds, pound and a half, 2 pounds, whatever, 60, go up to an 18.5. I don't think you'll like how the gun shoots. If you haven't done it and you try it, I think you'll go back to the 16 pretty quickly. But I don't think it affects the longevity of your gun. I really don't. I think my gun is a good example of the fact that it doesn't. These things are made out of good metals now. So.
Yep. I want to see if I can. I might have a video of basically this is a video that I'm going to be doing. There's two videos in this vein. One is the myth that putting a light on your pistol makes the recoil less. No, incorrect. It does not.
It makes the muzzle rise less.
Yes, but now, okay, let's just talk about that. I want everybody to pretend you had a 5-pound weight in your hand and you were holding it straight out. And then you just let your arm go, but you needed to stop that weight right as your arm was pointing straight down. Okay, just imagine that. 5 pounds. Okay, yeah, I can stop that. Now imagine it's 25 pounds. What's going to take to stop that? It's going to yank you, right? There's more weight moving. So when you put a light on your pistol, okay, yes, it might reduce the muzzle climb, but now you have more mass that you then have to stop, right? So you solved one problem and created another. And this is why when you see people, particularly like Grand Thumb, I'm not talking crap about him, but when you watch his videos where he's using a 1911 with a light, the muzzle's doing this. It absolutely is flopping everywhere. And it's because he has to now control all this inertia, this added weight on the end of his pistol, right? Whereas when the gun's lighter, you don't have all of this energy that you now have to slow down and stop, direct back forward, and then control the waggle back to center line. So it is not true that lights make the gun recoil less. That is myth. And if people would just go out into the range and try this, it'd be like, oh, obviously. And it's the same thing that's true that with heavy recoil springs. So the recoil spring is absorbing recoil, or the slide velocity. True. Where's it absorbing it to? The frame, your hand. Like these are all connected. One's not just independent of another. So when you have a heavier recoil spring, yes, the slide velocity is slowed down, but all of that energy is now being directed to your hands. And then when the slide is reciprocating, going back into battery, now it's hitting home harder. You can have a few problems there. One, you've changed the timing of the pistol. So if you're, I've seen people have feed issues, whatnot. Two, now sometimes I've seen it where the slide velocity is such that the cartridges are hitting the feed ramp so hard you're causing bullets set back into the case. And then finally, when the slide does go all the way home, it's going into battery much harder. And so you actually have increased recoil with a heavier recoil spring, or you've increased the amount of movement. This is why, very weird fact here, when you talk to like competition shooters, they tend to run extremely light springs. Yes, light ammo as well. But why don't they run heavy springs? It's because lighter springs reduce recoil, the felt recoil in your hand, to a degree. It can. You got a lot of problems going the other way, going lightweight. JMB figured this out a long time ago. 16 pounds is what that thing should be. Now, this changed when you get up into the A1 program for World War II. They reduced the spring weight down to about 15 pounds. Do I agree with that? No. I think the original 16 pounds is what it should be. It just, in terms of the feed, in terms of the tight lockup, in terms of the recoil control, everything. There's a lot of things to consider, but 16 pounds is it. A lot to say there, but 16 pounds is the right weight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've always looked at it and described it to people as a push-pull. Is that when you fire and the slide is coming back and you're compressing that spring, that's the push, and it's pushing against you. And then it reaches the point of where it's bottomed out, essentially, when the slide is all the way back. And now you've got the pull. Look at it this way, like the slide is being pulled away from you.
Yep.
So
that's a great way to say it.
That energy gets stored when the spring gets compressed, and it's there for a millisecond. And now suddenly it's racing to get away from you, going the opposite direction. It's pulling.
Yep.
So I've always looked at it like a push-pull cycle. That's how I've described it to people.
Yeah.
And if you think about it that way, as that spring is stacking up, as it's coming back, look at an 18 and a half pound spring in the gauge of the wire compared to a 16. It's significant. You can tell right away. You'll never mix them up.
Yep.
If you know enough about them, you'll look at, that's got to be the 18 and a half or whatever. But as that spring is compressing and all of those coils are stacking up, there's a lot of energy stored there, and it's only there for a split second before it's got a completely reverse direction.
Yep.
So what you have is, that spring is stacking up and it's pushing against you, and then all of a sudden that energy has to be released to go forward. So now it's kind of violent going back and violent going forward, whereas, like you said, the slide will reciprocate linearly in with a lighter spring on it. And I noticed that shooting the Lagarde loads.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything different in my grip. I would just hold the gun as I normally do, and they recoil so nicely. The gun stays very flat with a 16-pound spring, and we also shot Winchester white box. Those are noticeably hotter.
Yep.
And the gun still shoots. It's very controllable.
Yeah.
Very controllable. So like I said, I've tried the 18.5 pound springs. I've done different things with the actual mainspring. You know, should I do a 24? You know, most of my 1911s have a 19-pound mainspring in them and a 16-pound recoil spring, and I've never, ever, ever had reliability issues.
Let's take a look at this real quick. This is a good example. This is me shooting my Colt 1991. This is Winchester white box with a Colt 1991. And Mark, you're not going to be able to see this, but everybody at home will see it. Winchester white box, Colt 1991, 16-pound spring. Does that look like the gun's beating me up? Is that recoil intense? No, it's not. It's like, that is standard. That's a very flat shooting gun with just a 16-pound spring in it. Now, I wish I had the video of, and I'm going to do a video on this. We're going to go out to the range and try this, where you swap in an 18.5. that gun is moving. It is moving a lot more. So, anyway. So, let's let this be the last question, and then we'll roll it in for the night. Honorificable. I think I said that right. I bought the Chip McCormick Wilson Comet and Checkmate 10-round mags. Which ones are the best? So, I'm not into 10-round mags. I shoot 7s. However, in terms of 10-rounders, Chip McCormick's I have always had good luck with. I own 2 of them right now. The Power Mags, they're old Power Mags when they used to be under their own name. I do have a Wilson 10, does not work well. And Checkmate, I've never tried a 10, but anyway, hope that helps, man. Mark, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Enjoyed it as always.
It was a great evening. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I thank you all for being here. And yeah, watch tomorrow's video. We have the Raider. It's going to be a great time. So, thank you guys for watching. We will see you